Hi there, welcome to Managing Asia. I'm Christine Tan. The internet boom is fast changing the traditional business landscape. New .com companies are born each day, while others go bust. This explosion of new business opportunities has paved the way for a new breed of managers. My guest today is a case study of the .com entrepreneur. He's young, aggressive, and at the tender age of 24, already a self-professed workaholic. Patrick Grove only graduated from university in Australia a few years ago. While many of his peers are just launching their careers, Grove's already a chief executive, running a company with 100 employees in 6 countries. Grove belongs to a new professional class. They are young and often fairly inexperienced, but have a passion for the internet and hope to make it big in the .com economy.
Catcher.com, good afternoon.
Grove runs Singapore-based Catcher.com. He and 3 partners founded a company less than a year ago. They are positioning the business as Asia's homegrown alternative to the likes of Yahoo and Lycos. Grove's goal has been to build Catcher.com into the leading network of internet portals in Southeast Asia. Catcher's already set up local search engines in Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand, and the Philippines. With the help of a solid business plan and support from friends and family, Grove and his team have raised about $9.5 million to date, and they plan to take the company public soon. But like many of its .com relatives, Catcher's not making money yet. Catcher! Grove says he hopes to turn a profit within the next 3 to 5 years. But only time will tell just how bright and profitable Catcher's future will be. The firm is off to a promising start after 3 rounds of fundraising. But Grove knows how tough it can be to tackle cash flow issues.
For our first 2 months, when we had only raised about Singapore $2 million, it was a constant debate whether to spend it all very, very quickly or to spend it to budget to spend it over a 12-month period. And I think one of the decisions that we made was to spend it very aggressively and to spend it very quickly in hopes that the next fundraising effort would be successful. And to our benefit, that's been a very wise strategy to take. Because the market is growing so fast, it is better for us to be investing our money now as opposed to investing our money 12 months down the track.
It's a real coincidence that your first 2 financial backers were actually family related. Do you think they invested in your company because they knew you or because they believed in a business plan?
I don't think it was because they knew me. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, when money's at stake, I mean, no one is doing anyone any favors here. I think it was primarily because they believed in the business plan very strongly. I mean, the ironic thing is when I did pass it to them, it wasn't so much, here's my business plan, can you please invest? It was, here's my business plan, can you please pass it on to anybody that you know that can invest? But the ironic thing is, after they read it, they came back and called up and said, look, you know, actually I want to invest. And I was taken aback at first, but then I thought, okay, why not? We just basically went from there.
One of your backers is a prominent business family here in Singapore, the Shaws.
Yeah.
Do you think Catcher would be here today without them?
I think Catcher would definitely be here today without them, but I think probably it would be a different animal than it is today. I think one of the things they have helped us is they have allowed us to move very, very quickly. I mean, for instance, we're in their office as we speak, but I think their understanding of the media business, you know, is very significant, and it's really helped us a lot.
Do you think you were lucky to get funding so fast?
I think we were lucky. I think one of the benefits we had is that we started seeking funding in our early days in Australia, whereas if we had started to get funding in Singapore, I think it would have held back our development plans by about 3 months, whereas at that time Australia was going through a huge technology boom, and there was a lot of startups being funded, so it was a lot quicker for us to get funded in Australia than quickly relocate to Singapore. And I think that really saved about 2 months, which in the internet world is a long time.
You're only 24 years old. Do you think age has been, or youth rather, has been a positive or a negative factor in terms of starting up the company?
I think in our early days, the 4 of us that founded the company, we were very worried that we were too young and that no one would take us seriously. And I remember for the first couple of months we used to wear suits to work every day with ties and jackets. And I think after a while, as the business started to grow and as we started to see the success of the business and the recognition of the business, I think it more came to the case that it was actually a benefit that we were younger as opposed to a lot older. And one of the funny things is one of the first venture capital funds that did come to visit us, the VC came to us and within about 3 hours of meeting us decided to invest, and he actually pulled me aside later on and said, you know, Patrick, it's actually really refreshing to finally meet someone so young who believes so passionately in the internet. He goes, you know, all I ever get is business plans from people that know how to write great business plans but don't know a thing about the internet. And he goes, if you guys were any older, I would not have invested in Catcher. And so we were taken aback, but it was reassuring to know that it wasn't an issue at all with investors.
Do you think you would consider bringing in a seasoned CEO to help you manage the growth of the company at some point in time?
It's definitely something that we would consider. I think at this stage of the game, the business is still growing very fast, and I mean, really, the founders of the company and those who have the vision really still need to be sort of at the forefront of the company. But I mean, what we have done is we've started to split the company into two parts. So we've started to split the company into those who are the entrepreneurs and those who are the executors, and that's where we are starting to bring in very seasoned professionals in the more execution part, whereas founders such as myself are more the ones driving the business and bringing the business forward into new areas for expansion, whereas very professional and seasoned managers are the ones executing and implementing that strategy across the region.
You're aiming for a listing on the Singapore Stock Exchange by the end of this year. After that, you're aiming for a NASDAQ listing. Why list so fast and so soon?
Well, I think aiming for a listing, it's something that every startup, when they first sort of come together and raise money for investors, it's something that they all want to do. And, you know, obviously the earlier they do so, the better. So we're now at that stage where in order for us to take the business to the next level is to go for a public offering. I think another one of the reasons for us to go for a listing, it's really two key reasons. One is the marketing angle that you get from a listing, and also the credibility that is placed upon the business once you are listed. I mean, it proves that one is a serious player. I think when we first started, the key question or the key goal was, you know, will we survive past Christmas, sort of thing. Now that we've survived past Christmas, that is, the question is no longer will we survive. The question is now, will we be number one or will we be number two? And I think now that we're at that stage of the business development, we have to take it to the next stage, and we have to go for a public offering. And we need to build the business such that we can compete equally with a lot of these American brands that are starting to move into the Asian region.
Are you prepared for all the volatility that comes with a listing, though?
There are pros and cons of listings, but we are prepared for it. I mean, the share price is not something that we're going to be focusing on a daily basis. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, the business is still intact, the business is still the same, the management team is still the same. I mean, if the share price is to move up 10% or down 10% over a matter of hours, nothing fundamental has changed to the business per se. And I think it's just a matter of educating, you know, the team to not focus on the share price on a daily basis.
Stay with us. After the break, we talk to Patrick Grove of Catcher.com about cash, content, and the competition. Managing Asia will be right back.
The next decade could be a special one for Australia.
We still need to keep on pressing forward with further reform.
We're not advocating assimilation as a social policy.
You will see us
be involved in coalitions, partnerships and equity investments.
Most analysts here believe the good times are here to stay, at least in the short term.
Hi there, welcome back to Managing Asia. My guest today is Patrick Grove, co-founder and CEO of Catcher.com. The company is less than a year old and has already raised about $9.5 million US. Catcher.com is building a network of localized portals in Southeast Asia. You're a new company, you're a young company, you're a small fish in a big pond. You're up against the likes of Yahoo and Lycos, who are also interested in the internet market in Asia. What sort of edge do you have against these big boys?
Okay, I think one edge is firstly our overall strategy and the way that we attack these markets. I think the mistake that some of these American players made when they first came to Southeast Asia is that they looked at Southeast Asia as one homogeneous market. They didn't look at building specific portals for each country in Southeast Asia. What they did is they built one generic portal, assuming that people in Malaysia would be interested at what's happening in Singapore, and also obviously assuming that people in Indonesia would be interested in what's happening in Thailand. Whereas when Catcher first launched, that was our key strategy, was that that's not the case. Rather than building one generic portal, we built a network of localized portals. So we have a portal for Singapore, a portal for Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand. And each portal is very different.
You might be the first to build a localized content portal. Yeah. But what's stopping these American heavyweights from copying exactly what you do and doing it even better? Yeah,
there's nothing stopping them at all from doing that. I think one of the key things that will be a key differentiating factor for Catcher is the Catcher brand, and that's why we've invested very heavily in building our brand across the region. You've seen Catcher campaigns very aggressive in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand, and so on, because we don't view marketing as an expense. We view marketing really as an investment into our brand. We view the Catcher brand as a key barrier to entry for a lot of these portals as they begin to enter this space.
You've also spent a lot of money on advertising, some 2 to 3 million Singapore dollars since you started the company last year. What sort of budget do you have for advertising, and how do you plan to increase the profile of the company?
I think our budget it's a very closely guarded secret how much we want to spend on marketing, but I mean we do believe very strongly on marketing. We are a very marketing driven organization, and we believe very strongly in our branding and making sure that our brand is consistently portrayed throughout the region. But I mean, also, one key fact about our marketing strategy is that we're not per se trying to promote the name Catcher.com itself. What we've done in each territory that we're in, we're actually promoting and marketing the local brand. For instance, in Singapore, we're promoting Catcher.com.sg, whereas in Malaysia, it's Catcher.com.my. So what we prefer to do is for the local market to only have exposure to their local brand, and not so much the generic Catcher.com brand as a whole.
The way you spend your ad dollars, for instance, here in Singapore, you're sponsoring TV programs. Now, your critics say your ad dollars would be better spent in other ways. How do you respond to that?
Okay. Well, I guess what we do is because we invest so much in marketing, it's something that we watch very, very closely. We don't so much just allocate money and then review the performance of that allocation 3 months later. One of the beauties of the internet is that the minute you launch a campaign, you can track instantly whether or not that's affecting your website. You know, is traffic today higher than traffic yesterday? And we watch very, very closely every single campaign that we launch. So whether it be a TV campaign or a radio campaign, we watch the site traffic and the user registration very, very closely. If we feel that a campaign is not working, we pull it straight away. If we feel that a campaign is working better than expected, we actually increase the funds allocated to that campaign to extend it. So I would disagree with the comment that we're not spending our money wisely. We're watching very, very closely how we spend the money.
You're very dependent on advertising revenue right now. I understand you're also looking at e-commerce as another potential source of revenue. Tell us about your plans in this area.
Okay, what we see happening in Southeast Asia over the next 2 years, that we see that there'll be a big increase in e-commerce usage. You'll start to see a lot of e-commerce websites develop. But what we plan to do as Catcher is that we plan to aggregate a lot of these existing e-commerce sites into a Catcher mall. So what we plan to do is build an online mall in each of the countries that we're in. So we'll build an online mall in Singapore, we'll build a separate one in Malaysia, and so on. One of the benefits of a portal such as Catcher is because there's so much traffic coming through our site, it's very easy for us to leverage off that huge traffic base and large membership base to divert this traffic into e-commerce offerings.
When do you see your e-commerce revenue overtaking your advertising revenue?
We still view that it's very early days for e-commerce in Asia. Although the market will grow very quickly, I would see that e-commerce taking over pure advertising revenue probably in the next 3 to 5 years.
A lot of .coms like Catcher are not making money yet, nor aim to make a profit right away. When do you hope to turn in a profit?
We aim to turn a profit about 3 to 5 years from now. I think what's reassuring is that companies such as Yahoo, which were founded about 5 years ago, are now only starting to make profits sort of 5 years into their history. What companies like Yahoo have proven, though, is that the advertising model is a successful model, and it is a model that does work, and that the first 5 years are very important to firstly build the brand, to build the usage, and to build the market dominance. And that's what we're trying to do in our first 5 years. We're trying to build the brand very aggressively. We're trying to place ourselves in a position that we will dominate the markets that we're in, and that once advertisers start to recognize the internet as a very effective online advertising medium, and that's where Catcher will start to be profitable.
Don't go away. .coms come and go. We talked to Patrick Grove about his plans if Catcher.com doesn't make it. Managing Asia will be right back.
Join the fun of Singapore's Millennia Mania celebrations anytime from June 1999 to August 2000, and you may win a free return vacation. There'll be one lucky winner every day for 458 days.
Starwood Preferred Guest, the program with no blackout dates. You can claim your points earned anytime, anywhere. Starwood Preferred Guest. Be one.
Over the years, he's parlayed his informal style and love of adventure into one of the most powerful brands in marketing history, Virgin. And when he's not out pinching market share from the bigger brands, you'll find him plodding away to land in the Guinness Book of World Records for the 4th time. Fearless entrepreneurs like Richard Branson find a kindred spirit in Forbes. He's just one of the 5 million readers worldwide who rely on Forbes every other week.
In an ever-changing world, news and events shape our lives. Every weeknight, CNBC Asia brings you the day's biggest stories.
President Abdurrahman Wahid
Shedding light on the latest events impacting Asia and the world. News that's incisive, timely, and in-depth. News that matters to you. Asia Nightly News with Grace Pond. Tonight on CNBC Asia.
Welcome back to Managing Asia. My guest today is .com entrepreneur Patrick Grove. This 24-year-old studied commerce at the University of Sydney in Australia. He came back home to Singapore last year to set up Catcher.com. Grove now manages a staff of 100 in 6 countries. There's a lot of hype surrounding internet companies at the moment. One day the industry will start to consolidate and perhaps the euphoria will start to die down. Does this bother you?
No, it doesn't bother me at all. I think there is a lot of hype, but I think when you still look at the key indicator or the key success factor of the internet is really, the number of people using the internet and the number of people and the growth in internet usage every day. I think there's been a very clearly a fundamental change in the way people receive information and the way people entertain themselves, and that is via the internet. And I'm an internet user, a very aggressive internet user, and so is a lot of other people in this company. And even if the press was to stop covering the internet at all, it would not affect for 1 second my internet usage. And I think for a lot of people out there as well, it would not affect people's interest and people's desire to use the internet on a daily basis.
What do you think it takes to survive in the internet industry?
I think what it takes to survive is firstly a lot of guts. It's a very risky business. You know, there's a lot of risks that one needs to take. I think the second thing it needs to take is that I think one has to believe very strongly in what they're doing and to believe very strongly in the internet. I mean, it's a question that you get all the time. You know, what is going to happen? You know, if internet valuations do this, or if the hype surrounding the internet drops. I think people need to ignore all that. People need to ignore all the hype and still believe very strongly as the internet itself, as a way of communicating with people around the world. And I think as long as people have those two key factors, I think they'll survive in this industry.
You're 24 years old and already you manage 100 people in the region. What sort of approach do you use in managing people or employees who are much older than you are?
It can get very tricky, but I think at the end of the day, I think what is great about our team is that we all have the common goal. We all want to make Catcher, you know, the largest internet company in the region. And I think when you're all working towards a common goal, it's not an issue of who's older or younger than other. You know, everybody is working towards the same common goal. Everybody knows their role within the organization and what they need to do to help Catcher achieve that goal.
Do you like being the boss?
Do I like being the boss? Sometimes I don't, sometimes I do. But at the end of the day, it's a job that has to be done.
How do you want your employees to regard you?
I want my employees to regard me as, I think, someone that's very fun to work with, and someone to admire as a visionary. I mean, at the end of the day, it is a very aggressive business, and we need to clearly set out where it is we want to take this business. I mean, we're expecting people to give us 100%, and they need to know when they're giving us 100%, what is that doing for the company, and where's the company going? So we need to communicate very clearly what we are trying to do.
You mentioned there were some things that you like or don't like about being a boss. What don't you like?
I think one of the things I don't like about being the boss is that everything that I do and everything that I say is monitored and watched very closely by others in the organization. Sometimes you just want to get away from everything and just be yourself. And you know, maybe sometimes I just want to duck out for a couple hours and read a magazine or just surf the internet. But in the role that I'm in, and when the company is growing so quickly, there's never any time for me to be by myself. The phone is always ringing, emails are always coming in, and it does get very difficult to sometimes just sit back and actually think about the bigger picture and how things are moving.
Many founders of startup companies usually feel the need to get involved in every detail of the business. Are you like that? Are you a control freak? Do you like to delegate?
I think in my very early days, yes, I was a control freak, but there's, you know, on one hand, you can be an excessive control freak, but then the company moves very slowly as a result because you want to double check everything before it goes out. But then on the other hand, you can delegate a lot of authority to those below you, and then that allows the company to move very, very quickly. I think in our early days when we first started, it was very important to make sure that everybody on the management team understood the strategy and understood the way forward. So in those days, it was necessary for someone like myself to have very hands-on control over everything that's being done. But now that the strategy is very clearly defined, and now that the strategy is proving to be successful, it is not necessary for me to be on top of every little thing that happens. I think there's a lot of trust placed with members of management, but then at the end of the day, they have been executing very strongly. So as long as they're delivering, as long as they're meeting objectives and deadlines, there's very little hands-on interference coming from myself.
Tell me what you do on a normal working day. What sort of hours do you put in?
The normal working day would probably be, would start in the morning at 9 a.m., probably spend the first hour checking emails. I don't know how it happens, but every morning when I arrive, there's another 50 emails that have showed up in my inbox that weren't there the night before. So I probably spend the first hour trying to clear through that backlog of emails. During the day, it's a lot of meetings, a lot of conference calls with a lot of the offices around the region. And then the working day probably ends on a good night about 1 to 2 in the morning.
You spend such long hours, though, in the morning. I mean, it's incredible. How do you do it?
I'm still asking myself the same question, how do I do it? I think at the end of the day, I just love what I'm doing. If someone was to force me to leave the office, let's say at 7 p.m., I wouldn't know what to do with myself, you know. So I think it's, as long as I'm in the office enjoying what I'm doing, I'll basically stay there until I need to sleep.
Do you expect to be the next Jerry Yang of Yahoo in Asia?
No, not really. At the end of the day, what I really want to be known for is creating the leading network of internet portals in Southeast Asia.
A lot of .coms fail every year. What happens if Catcher doesn't make it? What would you do then?
Wow, that's a really tough question. That's something that I've actually never ever considered. If Catcher did make it, I think what I would do is I would move straight into trying to start up another internet startup. I mean, the internet is something that I believe so strongly in, and if Catcher in itself was to fail, I think I'd move straight into starting another internet startup.
Finally, I understand you don't watch any TV, and you spend most of your time surfing the internet. Apart from Catcher.com, what's your favorite website?
Firstly, one of my favorite websites would have to be the HollywoodStockExchange.com. It's a virtual stock exchange with over 200,000 members around the world. And what it does, it gives you an imaginary portfolio and allows you to invest imaginary sums of money in various actors and actresses and in various movies. So that's one of my favorite websites. Another one of my favorite websites is Launch.com, which is, in a way, it's like MTV online. It's an example of a website that has very successfully been able to exist solely on broadband content and stream music videos. And that's probably one of my favorite websites, because broadband is something that I believe very strongly in, and it's where we want to move Catcher towards over time.
And that was Patrick Grove, co-founder and CEO of Catcher.com, based here in Singapore. I'm Christine Tan. Join me again next week when we talk to other entrepreneurs and executives and find out how they're managing Asia.
Managing Asia was brought